Thanks for tuning in to the Wingspace podcast. This podcast is not a replacement for mental health treatment or professional health care. In case of crisis or emergency, please contact your local healthcare provider or dial 911.
Hey there, and welcome to the Wingspace podcast. In today's episode, we are going to talk about why New Year's resolutions don't work and a few alternatives that you might consider as you end 2023 and prepare for 2024.
Hey listeners, quick intermission with one of our providers at Hope and Healing, Kristen Wilson, LCSWC, who has started offering a new program at Hope and Healing for our couples called Prepare and Enrich. So Kristen, could you give us a little more information about that program?
Prepare and Enrich is a service that we'll be offering to premarital couples. It is a strength-based program that utilizes assessment portion and then subsequent sessions to look at that assessment and discuss what are your strengths, what are the areas of growth, what are conversations that you'd like to have as you are leading up to and preparing for marriage. One of the nice things about Prepare and Enrich is that it covers not only a wide variety of areas, but it can be utilized with couples that are in different stages of life as well. So maybe this is your first marriage. Maybe it is a blending of families that come into play when you are preparing for this. So the idea is that we can support you in that process and support you in having conversations with your partner and planning ahead for success.
And if someone is listening and is interested in seeking out this service for themselves and their partner, how could they go about inquiring or scheduling an appointment?
Contact us at Hope and Healing. You can go to the website and send us your information and we'll get back with you, or you can give us a call and we'll get you scheduled. There's more than one option when it comes to utilizing this program. This is a set group of sessions. So you will either be choosing to engage in 4 sessions or 8 sessions, depending on what your needs are, what your interests are, and what works for you. The assessment is part of both of those. The skill building, the recognizing our growth areas and working on those are included in both of those sets. So you will get that experience, but just the timing of it might look different depending on your needs.
Yes, so you can give us a call at 301-690-8404 extension 0. If you get the voicemail, make sure that you leave us one so that we can give you a call back within 24 hours. You can also visit our website, like Kristen mentioned, at hopehealingtherapy.com.
Welcome back to the Wingspace podcast, a place to take up space. I am finishing out our first season of the Wingspace podcast, the end of 2023, as we look at why New Year's resolutions do not work and what you might consider doing instead. You know, many people make New Year's resolutions and many more of them do not keep them. What ends up happening is that we feel frustrated and almost like we failed. That's a really cruddy way to start the year. Almost knowing that I'm going to make these resolutions and I'm probably not going to keep them. I'm just going to fail. So let's talk about why they fail. And some of these might be pretty obvious to you. The first one is that they're just too big. They're not specific enough. So maybe it's, I want to lose weight. Okay. Have you considered what the steps are that are necessary in order to lose weight? The nutrition, behaviors, habits, and steps. Things such as nutrition, exercise, lifestyle. We make these big, broad, I want to, or I'm going to, and they're really not specific enough for us to even know where to start. Because really it's the tiny little steps that we have to engage in order to meet the big goal. A lot of times we have them too big and we come up with them too soon. It's the end of the month. It's New Year's Eve. People start talking about New Year's resolutions and then we decide in a quick moment what we're going to do. We rattle off this list and we just don't have enough focus because we haven't done the next thing, which is there's no planning. So we make them too big, we make them way too fast, way too soon, and then there's no planning. And when we make them fast without that planning, what happens is that a few days, a few weeks, a few months into it, we lose track, and then we don't get back onto that path. And when we don't plan, ultimately what ends up happening is that there's no accountability, and we're not eliminating the obstacles and the challenges that are going to come in our way. So consider, with no accountability, if you say, I'm going to declutter my house, whose judgment is it that the house is cluttered? Whose judgment is it that it's no longer cluttered? So where's the accountability? Who's going to hold you accountable for cleaning out every closet or whatever it happens to be? And then when you plan, you can think ahead of what the obstacles are. So we often fail with our New Year's resolutions because we don't think about the obstacles that we're gonna the bumps in the road that are gonna happen, or even considering that our environment may not even be conducive for the thing that we want. Let's say my New Year's resolution is that I'm gonna run, 1,000 miles in 2024. I don't even know if that's possible. Who knows? Well, that's a great big plan. It's maybe not too big. It's pretty specific. It's not, too general. But what if I have little children and I don't have a childcare plan for when I want to go running? The period of my day that I'm available to run, I don't have childcare. It's an obstacle in my way that now I can't meet that goal. What if your plan was to eliminate sugar, yet your partner or the person that you share your house with, they're that person with the never-ending sweet tooth? It's going to be really hard to continue this over a long period of time if every night they're having a bowl of ice cream or some other kind of snack. And then without planning, we don't take into consideration what it's really going to take. Supplies, the schedule, what support we might need, and the actual action steps to get there. So the fourth reason why they don't stick is because maybe we really don't have that real desire for the change in the first place. We, again, make these resolutions based on what we think we should be doing, or we must, or we need to do, or even through the purpose or the process of peer pressure, when we really aren't motivated or at all have a desire to make that change. Maybe the goal that we want to meet, that we've established over the course of, let's say, talking to some friends, isn't in line with our values, isn't aligned with who we are or who we are striving to be or who we believe we are. And so there's no real desire, which means it's not going to happen. So they don't work because they're too big. We create them too soon. We don't plan, and we don't have a desire. So a couple of ideas that you might consider doing instead of New Year's resolutions. The first one is create a bucket list for the year. This sounds kind of big, but you could break it up into a couple of different ideas. So maybe you make a list of the things that you want to do or accomplish over the course of the year. That too might seem like it's really big because how many do I pick? Well, Gretchen Rubin, I mentioned her before, she creates the number for the number of the year. So I created 23 for 23 this year, and I'm working on my 24 for 24. So 24 things that I want to accomplish over the course of the year. Keep in mind, I'm going to accomplish more than that because let's say one of the things on my list is a monthly date night. Well, I'm going to accomplish 12 of those, hopefully, in addition to all of the other things on that 24 list. Maybe if that 24 for 24 doesn't doesn't intrigue you, then you create monthly or seasonal bucket lists. So let's say, for instance, your old New Year's resolution would be to spend more time with family. It's pretty big, and unless there is lots of planning, it might fall off. But if you created, for example, a winter bucket list, then you might find you and your family or your friends sledding, making a snowman, ice skating, making snow angels, drinking hot chocolate, having a movie day or a pajama day. And by default, that bucket list has allowed you to spend more time with family and friends. The bucket lists can be in line with who you are and who you are striving to, the life that you're striving to live, by the actions that you take and the values that you demonstrate. Another idea is to follow 30-day challenges. Instead of saying, I want to be healthier in 2024, remember, it's really big and it takes a lot of steps to plan it. Maybe you create a 30-day or a monthly challenge to keep you focused on healthy habits. So, for example, many of us want to start fresh and clean in the new year. January is kind of the year of the month of declutter, right? So we do a 30-day declutter challenge. One day I'm going to go through my shoes. The next day I'm going to go through socks and undergarments. The next day I'm going to go through handbags, bags and accessories. And by the end of the month, I have decluttered my home. And then in February, you could do a communication or a marriage relationship related challenge where you're connecting daily in different and unique ways with your partner, your spouse, your friend, whomever. You're going to want to think of seasonal things as well. Walking challenges in March or April when the weather warms up. Self-care challenges to focus on something that you're doing for yourself each day. 30 days of mindfulness, 30 days of gratitude. Maybe it's a yoga challenge or a movement challenge. What ends up happening is that once you do something for 30 days, it really does become a part of your daily routine and who you are. So by the end of the year, you are a healthier person for having completed 12 30-day challenges. You've decluttered your home, so you have a healthier environment. You have healthier communication with your family and your friends. Maybe you've lost a little weight and toned up. Maybe because you've increased your movement, your blood work might be better, lower cholesterol, things like that. You overall have healthier habits by taking it month by month, day by day, rather than looking at a big goal and one big year as a big step. The next idea, instead of monthly challenges, is a year-long challenge. This is kind of in line with the bucket list. It's kind of in line with, the 24 for 24. It might seem really big, but you might say, in this year, I want to. So maybe it's read a certain number of books or walk a certain number of steps or bike a certain number of miles, right? It's a year-long challenge. Maybe instead of focusing on what you want to change or do differently, you focus on what you're looking forward to and what are the steps that are necessary to get to those things. So if you're looking forward to, for example, a new novel in a series, well, you're probably going to want to read the other novels first. So that would be your goal. Read 1, 2, and 3 because I want to read 4. If you're looking forward to running a 5K or a half marathon or a marathon, well, that's a big goal. So maybe the steps that you have to take to reach that is do a couch to 5K, then increase that to half marathon training, increase that to marathon training. So ultimately you're completing the goal, but you've broken it down based on what you're looking forward to doing in the course of the year. Instead of saying, for example, I want to lose weight, you might look at what the steps are necessary for that and then create a plan. So the fifth idea is to do trackers. You could track your steps, you could track or log your food, you could track your water intake. And these little steps that you're going to take will help you achieve that bigger goal of losing weight within smaller steps. And better yet, it could include the idea of tracking going along with your 30-day challenge. So in January, I'm going to do a water challenge. I'm going to track the water I drink based on the challenge that I pick, right? So I'm going to also maybe look at the goals that I want to achieve. How do I break those into steps? And I'm going to track to keep myself accountable for completing those steps. The next one is kind of a big idea, but maybe you could consider it, and that is choosing a word for your year. Instead of a resolution, you might decide that 2024 is going to be slow or peaceful or adventurous. And then as you plan your year, you put events on the calendar, you try to keep those in line with that goal. So if your goal is to slow down, then you're probably not going to fill your calendar. However, if you are a person that by default of your situation happens to be a busy calendar, then that goal of having that word of the year is probably not going to work. Consider it. It might be worth it. The last thing is that whatever you do, start small. I already said one of the first things that keeps us from accomplishing these is that we go too big too soon. So let's start small. You've heard me mention before James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. He talks in this book about the example of someone who says, I want to wake up 1 hour before my family every day next year. So that is a New Year's resolution that's pretty specific. So maybe not too big, maybe not too unrealistic. So what happens is I say I'm going to wake up an hour before my family. January 1st comes. We stayed out late the night before. Didn't happen. Next day, we're back to school. You know, it's like the Monday of the Mondays, even though it's not a Monday. It doesn't happen. So by, I don't know, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th of January, I've already thrown this resolution out the window. And I think about that resolution all year long. And I think about the fact that I didn't accomplish it. Because too big, way too big. James Clear says you break it into smaller steps because 1% increase today ultimately gets to, if you do 1% more today than you do tomorrow, than you did yesterday, by the end of the year, you've done 365% more. That's huge. And it's tiny step by tiny step. So if you say, I want to wake up an hour before my family, then in the month of January, the goal becomes, I'm going to wake up 5 minutes before my family. 5 minutes. So instead of waking up at 6, I'm going to wake up at 5:55. Then in February, I say, I'm going to wake up 5 minutes earlier. So instead of 5:55, I'm going to wake up at 5:50. So you see that over the course of several months, you're just adding 5 more minutes to that. So that by the end of the year, you're potentially, right? The goal is, in the year 2024, I want to wake up an hour before my family. So if at the end of the year, you're waking up an hour before your family, you've achieved that goal. But you did it in tiny steps rather than coming out the gate on January 1st, waking up an hour early. And then you're not feeling like a failure or frustrated or whatever by the fact that you didn't accomplish that New Year's resolution. So, quick recap. What to do instead? Create bucket lists for the year. Maybe it's a 24 for 24 list. Maybe it's a monthly bucket list. Maybe it's a winter, spring, summer, fall bucket list. A list of things you want to accomplish. Maybe, number 2, you do a series of 30-day challenges. Every month, you pick a different challenge and you hold yourself to that thing for that month, knowing that the thing you did the month before is probably going to stick. So if in January you say, I want to drink more water, and in February you want to take more steps, you're already drinking more water when you get to February, and now you're drinking more water and walking more steps. The third thing is a yearly challenge, something you want to accomplish over the course of the year that is attainable and that's specific. You're going to focus, number 4 is focus on the things that you're looking forward to or that you want to accomplish, and then looking at the steps in order to get to those things. Number 5 is to use trackers and to hold yourself accountable for the goals that you want to achieve. Number 6 is choosing that word of the year. And number 7, the very last, but definitely not the least of them all, is to start small. So what I would like to do very quickly is to share with you a couple of the things that I had on my list for 2023, my 23 for 23 list, and give you an idea of where I'm going for 2024. So I wanted to read 40 books. I'm at 34 right now, and I have a couple of books in the works. I'm a juggler when it comes to books. I often have multiple books going at one time. I wanted to make sure we took our boys on an international trip. Here's a hint. We already had that trip planned when I created this list. So it was something I knew that I was going to be able to mark off that list. Take a certain number of trips independent of that one. Monthly date nights. Getting caught up on scrapbooking. I think that one's going to probably be on my list for the rest of my life. Accomplishing certain craft things for certain people. No spoiler alerts here. Knitting my first real thing. I don't really know why I wrote real thing, because I've never knitted anything in my life. That has not been checked off yet because I have no idea how to knit. I got knitting needles and yarn. Well, I got a gift card for knitting needles and yarn 2 Christmases ago. Last Christmas, I used that gift card to buy the knitting needles and the yarn. Here we are a year later, I still have no idea how to yarn. So, you can probably guess what's on my 24 for 24 list. And then it was other things like seasonal freezer meal nights where I put freezer meals together. I wanted to start a podcast. Here we are. It's checked off the list. I wanted to pay off certain debt things. I wanted to go on a trip by myself. I took a conference, a business conference. You get the idea. So sometimes then what I'll do is I'll look at what did I accomplish in 23? What didn't I accomplish in 23 that I am going to move from one list to the other? So definitely keeping those date nights, right? It keeps me accountable for making sure. And last year it was monthly. This year I want to make it, or 2024, I want to make it twice a month. I'm going to keep those girls' nights or lunches or coffee dates or whatever, just to keep me connected with my best girlfriends. A certain number of books, a certain number of trips, and then instead of knitting something, I want to knit a gift for someone. But I think I'm actually going to make that a bit more specific and determine who I'm going to make that for and for what occasion, so that I can hold myself accountable a bit more specific. I'm going to keep going on a solo trip because it was actually kind of fun. Last year, I said I wanted to start a garden, and we started tomatoes, and we were very successful with that. So this year, I want to have tomatoes and one more thing. So I'll decide if it's like cucumbers or something. Next year's our 20th anniversary, and we've already determined that we're going to go on a trip together. So that's on my list because I know I'll be able to mark it off the list, and that'll feel really good. I'm going to add more things. I have 13 on there right now, and I'm going to add more things. This gives me something to look at each month. We've talked before about planning and habits and that kind of thing. So, I periodically go and look at that list to make sure that the month ahead incorporates those things in it. And when I'm finishing out one month, so I just finished out November, I'm going to go look at what November was like, and then what are the things on my 23 for 23? How do I incorporate those in December? Or am I going to put them onto the next year's list? And what are the activities or habits or whatever I want to put on my calendar, put in the schedule so that I can accomplish those goals? So it's just a fun way to also look back on the year and say, when we talked in a couple of episodes before about doing like a year in review, you can look at your bucket list, your yearly bucket list, your monthly or seasonal bucket list, and look at all the things that you accomplished, and then be able to figure out what's more reasonable for the next year. There's a few things on this year's list that were not quite reasonable, so I'm going to change it for next year, and I feel like that's going to be more reasonable. Whew. New Year's resolutions are big. There's going to be a lot of messaging coming in the next couple of weeks and into the month of January. This concept of new year, new you, all these New Year's resolutions. And I want to invite you to throw that messaging out the window. I want to invite you to turn away from it. Yes, it's a new year. That's just because we turned the calendar. But you don't have to be a new person. You can just be yourself and maybe 1% better each day in order to better yourself and reach the goals that you want to accomplish. And don't set yourself up for failure. Don't make these big, huge resolutions that are too big. You've created them too fast. You don't have a plan, and you're not going to be able to hold yourself accountable because you really don't want to do it. Really think about the values that you hold true, the actions that are going to represent those values, and then the goals that you want to achieve with those actions that represent your values. Because you really want to be the best version of you going into the next year. Would love to hear what some of your bucket list items are. If you create a 24 for 24 list, I'd love for you to share it. Feel free to send us a DM. You can always send me an email, jennifer@hopehealingtherapy.com. And I want to give a very, very huge shout out to all of my listeners. We had a goal to start a podcast in 2023. We finished the first season with 30 episodes, and it's all because you guys are listening, and it's all because you're giving me feedback, and it's because you're giving me encouragement. So our very first episode was Start, Keep Going, and Don't Stop, and we're coming into the next season of this podcast with a few changes, a few improvements, and definitely we're just going to keep going, and we're not going to stop. So I'm signing off for season 1. I look forward to what season 2 brings us, and I hope that you have a very happy holiday season, a very happy new year, and I look forward to chatting with you in 2024.